And happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, as promised, pick up right where we left off. I didn't fix my, I didn't clean out my palette, but I did take a second to make the camera bigger so you guys can see a little bit more of what's going on there now. So I think that's good. All right, back to it. So we're going to start with the kind of darkening of this whole area. I should put the tag in there. Should I put the tag in there? I don't know. Let's do some of this first and then I'll put the tag in. The tag is a little bit of paintbrush, kind of stuff. So I've got the airbrush rolling right now, so I'm going to keep going with that. And then I can always drop the tag in after. The tag looks like it's made out of some sort of non-corrosive material. Aluminum, maybe. But it doesn't have the same patina that all the stuff around it has, so we'll deal with that when we get to it. But you see, I mentioned it last week, I had that super crazy, well, the bright yellow ochre on there, but the black, especially the opaque black, because it's a kind of a brownish black anyway, will just kind of like tone that all down. So it really works well. In fact, I tend not to put enough of the yellow on because it feels like, oh my gosh, I put, way too much yellow. It looks like a, school bus or something. When in fact, really, I don't have nearly enough on there once I get the, the darker values on there. So, I mean, that's not a big deal because you can always add more yellow to it. But it's always funny to me how, like, I've been doing this for a while. And even now, I still get stuck in that trap where it's like, I'm judging colors and values relatively to the things around them, and that's how we determine what a value is, by the the values that are around it and the colors, by the colors around it. You guys have all done the optical illusions where you'll have the same color squares surrounded by other color squares, and the similar color squares look like they're completely different colors because you're judging them in relationship to the colors that are around them. So that's what art is. That's what we struggle with all the time. So I don't know if anyone fully like gets it down without any problem. And to me, honestly, that's the fun of painting. It's messing with it and wrestling with it and being okay that it's not going to be like perfect right out of the gate. I'm okay with wrestling with it and finding a new way to do it, and having it go through that ugly stage and then be okay. I'm really okay with all that. All right, I'm going to keep going. I'm really down to the point where I got to start looking at that tag that's on this thing. It's right here, and I got to do something with it, but I'm not quite ready yet. I'm still having fun, so I'm going to keep airbrushing before I switch to the paintbrush. It has come up a couple times, and I'm going to do it, I promise. People have asked for not only the reference photo for this, so I will post that in a community post. But in that community post, people have also asked for some of the other pictures of this bike too. And I will do that as soon as I remember to. I'm so sometimes like, once it's not right in front of my face, it's gone. So I apologize for that, but that is sometimes who I am. So I will try to remember that. You guys can do me a favor by continuously reminding me to do that, and then we'll be in good shape. All right. How am I feeling about this? So am I to the point where I need to start using the airbrush down here? I think I almost am, which is great. So there's one more area that I want to kind of correct with the airbrush before I switch over to the paintbrush. This is getting so close. I love it. Okay, the blue area here. So remember, I kind of fogged the blue area and on these fins. I don't want to do that. I just moved everything down, but that's okay. I can actually fix that with the airbrush. I don't have to go back in with the paintbrush because it's just a minor bit of overspray that kind of got on the darker areas. So I can just kind of go in and lightly go over those dark areas, and then I'll clean them up. And what's nice is that little bit of overspray, the dark overspray that I get on the rest of it, just kind of blends it all together. So it's nice. I don't have to go back to the the paintbrush all the time, especially on a piece that I put the paintbrush, that I painted in with the paintbrush, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Again, it all comes down to mixing the two tools, just relying on the strength of each and letting them blend together. So, and what I'm left with is still that blue cast on the fins, which is perfect. That's just what I'm looking for. I missed this last one. I should have put blue on that, so I'll darken it up a little bit to kind of get rid of it. And there's a good sized scratch right here. I don't know where that came from. So we'll fix that. And a scratch down here too. Par for the course, I guess. Okay, and the same thing back here too a little bit. Yeah, same thing back here. We're gonna, oh, that's really dark there too. We'll start by darkening that up. That should have been a lot darker. And now we'll do the spaces between. This side is a little bit easier because they're a little bit wider. So it's much easier to kind of get in there and clean them up. Now remember too that the blue that got on that is just overspray. It's super, super light. You can see it because it's on the black areas, but it's really, really light and transparent. It takes 2 seconds to cover that. So it's not a big deal. It looks like it's a big deal. When it happens, it's like, oh man, I have to repaint that whole thing. But it's not like that. It's just that extra little bit of paint that got where it shouldn't. Okay, so I got to add the shading back in here. So I'm sitting right here. This should have more blue on it too, but I'm going to leave it the way it is for now. Sooner or later I'll have to grab the blue anyway, so that's okay. All right, good. I think I've got all the airbrush stuff. Meaning I've got this to the point now where I've done as much as I can with the airbrush at this point. So now I'm going to switch back to the paintbrush and start tightening all this up. And this is fun because it's a little bit of everything. It's the lights, the darks. It's more about the really tight details. All right, so let's get to it. I'm going to move my hose here. I got to move this paintbrush back. I was using this paintbrush here. I'll bring it out here. I was using this paintbrush this week to do some trees. This is a really neat Langnickel brush that I've had for a long time. And it's kind of a tired brush. It's been through a lot, so it doesn't have a lot of life left in it. But it's great for doing I use it for doing trees and stuff. It spreads out really nicely for doing leaves. And it's been sitting here and has a black handle. And every time I go to grab my little brush, I grab that brush by accident. So I'm going to put that back. This is the one I want. All right, same deal. We start at the top and start running through this. So I'm going to start. There's a lot here. There's a lot. There's highlights. There's darks. There's different colors. So when something's really involved like this, it's easier to get overwhelmed. So what I do is I end up just kind of taking a break for a second and then just looking at one small, really tiny area. And then that way it'll kind of get me started on it so that I'm not so overwhelmed. Where if you start looking at the whole thing and I got to come up with some sort of plan, and then all of a sudden I'm vapor locked. And so if that happens, I'll just pick a small area that makes sense and I'll just start. And what inevitably happens is, that little part, I'll get kind of sucked in, I'll get my feet underneath me, and then I'll just end up moving from area to area, and before I know it, I've got it done. So if you do find yourself overwhelmed, and it happens with everything. You go on a super long trip, where you have to, drive a long way or whatever. It's easier to look at that whole trip and get overwhelmed with it. It's like, oh man, where am I going to stop for gas? What am I going to eat? And all this stuff. And some people aren't like that. Some people are just like, all right, I'm going. And I envy those people, but I'm not like that. I get nervous if I don't have the plan. And that can really affect what I'm doing, because you get so paralyzed with, I need to figure it all out before I do it, to not doing anything at all. And that's not where we want to be. Or at least that's not where I want to be. Some people are okay with that. So what this is it's just really tightening up the edges that need to be tightened up. The areas that the airbrush just couldn't do. It just left everything soft. As the airbrush is designed to do, no matter how much detail we get out of it, no matter how many people, tout the virtues of super tight freehand airbrushing, it's spraying paint. So when you spray paint, you have a soft edge. It could be imperceptibly small to the human eye, but it's still a soft edge. It's not like a paintbrush stroke. So just got to be able to move back and forth between the two. For me, anyway. Again, there are people that love the allure of saying that they did everything just with the airbrush, and that's fine, because if you did these amazingly detailed, super tight paintings with a paint roller, I would be impressed. But I would also ask, is that the most important thing about your painting? You know what I mean? Is it that your painting is important because you did it with a roller and it doesn't look like you did it with a roller? That kind of thing. Which is fine. That's part of it too. It's why we can never have like debunking and debate channels about art on social media like YouTube or whatever, videos. I'd love to, because it would be a lot of fun. And I suppose you could, but it's all subjective. It's difficult to find truths, just hard facts when it comes to interpreting what good art is. It's just really, really difficult. I mean, certainly you can set the rules and then end up kind of looking at what art is, but if people aren't using the same set of rules, then it makes it really hard to do that. For instance, if you're classically trained and you've learned classical composition and color theory and all that fun stuff, then you could grab two pieces of art that were done with those intentions, and you can accurately judge them on those characteristics. But if you have someone who's just creating art and it makes them happy and they don't know the rules, but what they're coming out what they really like, you can't put that against an academic piece of art and then assume they share the same goals. Trust me, I would love it if you could. I would love it if art is more like science, but it ain't. Again, it can be, but it also can't. It's one of those things. All right, so I've missed this side of it here. I misinterpreted this side right here. The other side of the cylinder is here, so I gotta put that back in. There we go. It's blue too, but it's okay. It's okay. That's going to fade around. And again, this area I'm kind of spending a bunch of time on right here is pretty dark anyway. So it's gonna be able to be passed. So as I say that, and that's another thing too that I kind of do, like I'm talking about attack plans and everything in Tech Tuesday right now, and so getting things done on a painting, I have a kind of a internal method that I use. If I keep saying stuff in my head, like for instance, how I was saying, this, I need a little bit more blue here, and this should have been more blue. And if I find I keep saying that, then that goes on the list. Say, okay, you have to pull out the blue again. You've said it, so many times throughout so many different instances in the painting. That's something important. If I mention something to myself, that, I should have done this or whatever, and it really only happens once, that's not really terribly important to me. So, and it's probably not terribly important to the painting. If I say, that could have been whatever, a little bit darker or whatever, then it may not necessarily make the list of things to kind of adjust and look at. But if it keeps making the list, that's how I know that, okay, I really should at some point, just make a note on the side of the board here. This is craft paper on the Visionaire station that I use to keep it clean. And I have notes all over this thing. So if I'm doing something and I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to forget that if I don't jot it down, that's where I jot it down. So, and then I just, cross it out when I'm done with it. It's a pretty good system. It's not a good system if I ever want to go back and, look at the, the journey that the painting has gone through, because, obviously I change the paper out every once in a while and then all the notes are gone. And trust me, I've jotted down phone numbers and stuff and then got rid of the Visionaire and the paper and realized that, I threw out the phone number too. So also probably not a great habit to get into. All right, I missed all the dark here. That's good though. All right. The brace for this is right here. There's a lot of shading on this too, so I'll get back to that too. The whole motor, for me, this copper tube and whatever this tube is made out of, for me, those are the highlights of this, because they're on the top. They have this great patina to them that you can tell they're some sort of shiny-ish metal. So I can't wait to do those. And they're right on the top of they're the closest thing to the viewer in the motor. So they're really going to stand out. And I'm looking forward to getting those done. But those are the last thing to get done because I only want to do them once. And if I have to correct the background behind them, I'm going to run the risk of, screwing them up and then having to redo them. So back to front is usually the way to go. Usually. Again, not always. So had I not fixed, well, I suppose I could. So if I had not fixed the overspray between these, I could do them now with the paintbrush as well. In fact, I might, just to kind of darken them up anyway. See how dark they get? So I'll probably fix, I already did it, so I'm going to have to do all of them. So the paint goes on darker than it dries. So you got to keep that in mind too, which is why having a nice clean palette is a nice thing. Now this is just black, so it doesn't matter. But if I'm mixing up a color, you just remember that it dries a little bit lighter than it goes on. So if it's wet on the palette, you want to kind of keep that in mind too. And you get used to that, I guess. Certain colors dry differently than others. And if you stick to a certain palette, like I said, I use like that phthalo blue a lot. So I kind of know what it's going to do. And you will too. You just become familiar with how the colors mix and how they dry and the value that they have by themselves and the strength that they mix with other colors. That's why having like a million different tubes of paint is detrimental if you're trying to figure it out. Just too much to think about, and you never really get that intimate relationship with a color. And it sounds goofy, but it's true. You really get used to that color, and then you're going to know what it's going to do when you mix it with stuff. Sometimes to the point of another color would have been a better color or more efficient color to use, but you are so in tune with this one color, yellow or orange or whatever color it is, that you can but you can mix that color to do exactly what you want. Even though it takes more steps, it's going to be faster for you than trying to figure out a new orange. You know what I mean? So what I try to suggest to people who are having a difficult time with color is just severely limit your palette. Pick primaries and a couple secondaries, and then mix everything else. What you're going to find is, as you do that, say you pick red oxide for your orange, and that's your orange, and you've been mixing, you're like, it just isn't working for me. Then you swap out that orange for something else, and you try a different orange. You don't add another orange in necessarily. You try to figure out the first one realize what its strengths and weaknesses are, and then if it's not working for you, you switch to another orange. And then along the way, as you become more familiar with more colors, you can always, you're working with one orange and then you say, okay, this isn't working the way I want it to, but I remember red oxide working really well in this instance, and you grab the red oxide. You don't need very many colors. It's not like you're going to need 100 different tubes of paint, and it just doesn't, it doesn't work that way. You'll just become familiar with the colors that you love using. Okay. Before I move on, I got to make sure I'm done up here. Pretty close. Yeah, I think I'm... Yeah, because I still got to airbrush some of this in here. This actually is all dark. I don't know what I was thinking there. I know what I was thinking. I just wasn't looking at it. That's what I was thinking. Bolt, that's going to be painted separately. That's that. Maybe a little bit more airbrush in there. Finish the line around here. Lovely. Lovely, lovely. Oh, I didn't do those. Okay, oh, I did do those, didn't I? I'll have to go back and look. I think I did these. Yeah, no, I didn't. I did them with the airbrush, but I didn't do them with the paintbrush. So we'll do them right now. So important trick with the paintbrush too, especially with the tiny stuff, is the way the paintbrush actually works. A lot of people, we've always used paintbrushes, right? And yet, you never really stop to think about how they work, how they operate. So knowing how they operate can really help you with your painting. Meaning, the paint is pulled off the brush by the surface tension. So as you touch the surface and make contact, that deposits a little bit of paint on that. So as you draw from there, that's really what pulls the paint off the paintbrush. So if you just kind of go for it, and just like drop it on there and go, that's when you end up having like a rough line or a skip, because the paint isn't really flowing off the brush the right way. Plus the viscosity has a lot to do with it too. So if you touch the surface, make that contact so that the paint is now, coming off the brush. You pull the paintbrush in relation to the viscosity. So if I pull it really fast, I'm going to get it skipping because the paint can't be pulled off the bristles fast enough. And if I go too slow, that's when the brush will still, the surface will still pull the paint off the paintbrush, and that's why it puddles. That's why it makes that big, puddle at the bottom. So you got to kind of get used to the viscosity and how fast it pulls off the brush. But if you keep those things in mind, it'll help you make the adjustments that you need to make to keep things flowing the way they should be flowing. All right, how are we doing? We're doing good. Again, this is just straight black. I'm just kind of using black to tighten things up. There we go. I'll backfill this with the airbrush. I should have airbrushed right in here, but I didn't. So I kind of left this kind of ragged because and I don't want to come too close to this because, well, yeah, if it wasn't dark enough to make the blend, then I'd be in trouble. So right now I have all this room to blend the airbrush into the paintbrush. If I push the paintbrush strokes out here and there's any kind of fade right here, then you'll see the paintbrush strokes. But now they'll be buried, in what's going on back there, which is good. I'm still not doing the tag. I'm still avoiding that tag. I'm not really avoiding it, but I got to change colors for that. It's got to be the steel gray first. And I'm having fun with black right now, so that's the way that's going to go. Yeah, that's super dark. Plus that edge is really sharp on this. So tighten that up now. It's dark under here. I didn't airbrush this enough, which is okay too, you know, and I know I'll be ending up making an, oh shit, I screwed that up. It's got a little lip on that. I'll be airbrushing this again anyway. You know, I'll be pulling the airbrush out again with the black anyway to fix some of the spots that I missed. On something this complex, like I said before, you know, when I was starting to make a list of, you know, like what I gotta hit, it is a real good idea at this point to like completely finish a section, because if I start getting into, oh, I'll get back to that and I'll get back to that, I'll forget stuff. So at this point, it's probably a good idea to just bite the bullet and jump back and forth between the paintbrush and the airbrush until a section is completely done. We're almost there. We're almost to that point where I'm just going to take one little area and just finish it. But I still feel like I'm in the sort of kind of blocking in stage with the paintbrush as far as edges go. Just as I was, you know, in the blocking in stage with the black before, just kind of generally putting it in everywhere it needs to go, and then so I'm just about the point where like I'll jump back up and start and just finish an area and be done with it. So we're just about there. That'll definitely be the next episode. We'll start taking one little section at a time and finishing it up. And that way I will have to bounce around. You know, I will have to jump from the airbrush to the paintbrush, back to the airbrush, back to the paintbrush, back to the airbrush, that kind of thing. And that is also okay. So we'll run this episode out with the paintbrush, I think, and then when we come back next week, we'll just start to methodically pull through each section and finish them as we roll down. But dang, this is getting close. I also have to figure out what to do with the damage down below here. I'm still not sold on what I'm going to do on that. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet, so we'll figure it out. Yeah, I need more airbrushing on this too. Especially before I do highlights and stuff, yeah. Okay. Lovely, 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 lovely. Yeah, there's a lot more airbrushing. It gets to go up here. A little bit more blue, some of that. Need some highlights on this, which I don't have. This is getting close. This is really sharp. Okay, this I can get now. Yeah, more airbrushing in there. Some highlights in here. This I can tighten up though. Lovely. Oh, and the other side of this too. This linkage here needs to be tighter. Get the highlights on that after, and the bottom of this. Yeah, we're there. The next episode, we're going to just start at the top and just roll through this thing. Finish each bit as we go. I've got this all blocked off. It's lovely. There's a blue jay outside in the yard. I can hear him, and he's been like screaming all morning in a happy way. If you know blue jays, they can't be quiet, so he's having a good time. Good. I still have to deal with the the texture. This, it's really worn here. There's like a rubber like a rubber pad on this, and it's got Harley on it and everything. I've got to kind of deal with that. But again, this is a perfect example. If all I have to do is deal with this rubber pad, you know, I'm not bouncing around now. I'm just dealing with that. It's going to be a lot easier for me to wrap my head around it, you know, than to try to say, okay, I got gray in the brush. I'll do this, and then I'll put the gray up here, and it needs a little bit here, and I'm bouncing around. It gets chaotic that way. So we're in good shape. We are in good shape, kids. All right. So thank you. In about a moment, you're going to see the lovely Patreon members. So I didn't mention that last week. So in addition to supporting the channel as a member here, which helps out tremendously, you can also support me on Patreon. And in that instance, you get an additional open studio every week. So you actually get 2 open studios, which is fun. So if you'd like to do that, that would really help out around here as well. And that's what I got. So for Steve Leahy and Open Studio, you guys have a great week, and I will catch you next time. Thanks.